Billionaire CEO hid his black family out of shame, but when his wife and twins showed up, they became the stars at his own event. "You're ashamed of us," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Of me." "That's not true," Isaac protested weakly, unable to meet her eyes. "It is true." Cheryl's gaze held not anger but something worse. Disappointment. "You've created a world where we don't exist, Isaac. Where your black wife and mixed-race daughters don't fit the image you're trying to project." The elegant ballroom fell silent as Cheryl stood before him, 15 years of pain and dignity radiating from her presence. Behind her, two stunning young women, their daughters, watched with expressions that mirrored their mother's quiet strength. "I was wrong," Isaac finally admitted, his voice breaking as hundreds of elite guests strained to hear. "I was ashamed. I thought I had to hide you to keep my success. But I see now that I was wrong. I should have been proud of you, proud of my daughters." Have you ever wondered what it would take for a powerful man to finally face the family he abandoned out of shame? To watch as the very people he tried to hide became the center of attention at the most important night of his career? I'm Mr. Harrison, and today I'm sharing the remarkable story of how a billionaire's secret family became the unexpected stars of the night, teaching him the true meaning of success in the most public way possible. If you've ever felt judged for who you are or where you come from, this story will resonate deep in your soul. Give this video a like if you believe in the power of authenticity to overcome even the most carefully crafted deception. Isaac Winters stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, watching the city lights flicker like stars beneath him. 52 stories below, people moved through their ordinary lives while he remained apart, elevated by wealth and power that had become both his identity and his prison. At 45, Isaac had built Winters Enterprises from nothing into a tech empire that had revolutionized global communications. His innovations had made him a billionaire many times over. His name appeared on the cover of business magazines. World leaders sought his counsel on technology and economic policy. Yet as he stood there, 18-year-old scotch warming in his crystal tumbler, an emptiness gnawed at him. A void that no acquisition, no merger, no triumph in the boardroom could fill. "Mr. Winters?" His assistant's voice came through the intercom, interrupting his thoughts. "Ms. Reynolds is here to discuss the Blackwood Gala arrangements." Isaac pressed the button. "Send her in." Vanessa Reynolds entered with the confident stride of someone who had never questioned her place in the world. Tall, blonde, and impeccably dressed in a tailored Chanel suit, she represented everything Isaac had convinced himself he needed: sophistication, connections, and a pedigree that opened doors in the highest echelons of society. "Isaac, darling." She air-kissed his cheek, her perfume expensive and subtle. "I finalized the details for tomorrow night. The car will collect us at 7. I've arranged for Vogue to photograph us on arrival, and the Times will want a brief statement about the new venture." Isaac nodded, setting down his drink. "Sounds perfect." "It will be." Vanessa smiled, revealing teeth whitened to perfection. "The Blackwood Gala is the event of the season. Everyone who matters will be watching." Everyone who matters. The phrase echoed in Isaac's mind, stirring memories he'd spent years trying to suppress. "Is something wrong?" Vanessa's perfectly shaped eyebrow arched in concern. "No." Isaac forced a smile. "Just thinking about tomorrow's announcement." "Well, stop worrying. The world is at your feet, Isaac." She squeezed his arm. "This venture will cement your legacy." Legacy. Another word that cut deeper than Vanessa could know. After she left, Isaac returned to the window, but his gaze drifted beyond the skyline to the past he'd left behind, to a modest neighborhood across town where a different life once flourished. 15 years earlier, Isaac had been a different man, hungry for success but not yet hardened by ambition. He'd met Cheryl Jackson at a community college fundraiser where she was performing with a jazz ensemble. Her voice had captivated him, rich and soulful, filled with a depth of emotion that pierced through his carefully constructed defenses. "You're staring," she'd said when she found him waiting backstage after her performance, a half-smile playing on her lips. "I'm appreciating," he'd corrected, extending his hand. "Isaac Winters." Cheryl Jackson. Her handshake was firm, confident. And appreciation is fine, as long as it comes with respect. Always. He'd smiled, feeling something shift inside him, a recognition of something genuine in a world that often felt superficial. Would you like to get coffee sometime? I'd love to hear more about your music. Their connection had been immediate and profound. Despite coming from different worlds, Isaac, the son of middle-class drivers who'd sacrificed everything for his education, Cheryl from a working-class black family with deep roots in the city's arts community. They'd fallen deeply in love. My parents think I'm crazy, Isaac had confessed one night as they lay tangled in sheets, the city lights painting patterns across Cheryl's skin. They say we're too different. And what do you think? Cheryl had asked, her eyes searching his. I think they've forgotten what matters. He traced the curve of her cheek with his fingertips. I think they can't see past their own narrow vision of success. When Cheryl became pregnant just 6 months into their relationship, Isaac had proposed without hesitation. They married in a small ceremony, with only Cheryl's family present. Isaac's parents, disappointed by his choice and the hasty wedding, had refused to attend. They'll come around, Isaac had assured Cheryl, though doubt had already begun to creep into his voice. Once they meet you, once they see how happy we are. And if they don't? Cheryl had asked, practical as always. Then it's their loss. He'd placed his hand on her growing belly. We're a family now. That's what matters. The birth of their twin daughters, Tara and Talia, should have been the happiest day of Isaac's life. And for a brief, shining moment it was. Holding those tiny, perfect beings, seeing Cheryl smile as she cradled them, Isaac had felt complete in a way he never had before. They're beautiful, he'd whispered, tears streaming down his face as he held Talia while Cheryl nursed Tara. Perfect. They're going to change the world someday, Cheryl had said with quiet certainty. Just you watch. But as his business began to take off, as investors and mentors entered his life, subtle pressures mounted. Comments about family image and market perception wormed their way into his consciousness. At networking events, he noticed how others introduced their spouses, women who spoke the language of privilege, who understood the unwritten rules of power. Where's your wife tonight, Isaac? A potential investor had asked at a crucial fundraising event. Home with our daughters, he'd answered, the words feeling strangely like an apology. Ah, family man. The investor had nodded approvingly. Important to keep those worlds separate. Business is business, after all. Cheryl, with her straightforward manner and artistic soul, stood out in these circles. Not because she lacked intelligence or grace, she possessed both in abundance, but because she refused to play the games of the elite. She wouldn't change her natural hair to conform to Eurocentric beauty standards. She spoke openly about racial inequality and class barriers. She remained authentically herself. And Isaac, to his eternal shame, began to see her authenticity not as strength but as liability. The breaking point came at a crucial investor dinner. One of the potential backers, after several drinks, had made a racially charged comment about urban markets. Cheryl had calmly but firmly challenged him, pointing out the prejudice underlying his assumptions. I think what you're trying to say, she'd said, her voice level but her eyes intense, is that you don't believe black consumers have the same purchasing power or technological interests. The data suggests otherwise. The room had grown uncomfortable. The investor had backpedaled awkwardly. The funding had still come through, but afterward, Isaac's mentor had taken him aside. Your wife is passionate, the older man had said carefully. But in this world, Isaac, perception is reality. You need to decide what image you want to project. That night, lying awake beside Cheryl, Isaac had made the most cowardly choice of his life. Instead of standing proudly with his family, he began to distance himself. First emotionally, then physically, creating separate spheres for his work and home lives. If you've ever had to choose between being authentic and being accepted, hit that like button. And if you believe that true success means staying true to yourself and those you love, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison for more stories that will touch your heart and challenge your perspective. When Winters Enterprises secured its first major contract, Isaac moved his family to a comfortable but deliberately low-profile neighborhood, away from the spotlight. He began attending industry events alone, making excuses about Cheryl's schedule or the twins' needs. Eventually, he stopped mentioning them altogether, allowing colleagues to assume he was single or divorced. "Daddy, why don't we ever go to your work parties?" 6-year-old Talia had asked one evening as Isaac prepared to leave for yet another event. Her small face was solemn, her eyes, so like his own, searching his face with a perception that made him uncomfortable. "They're boring, sweetheart," he'd answered, avoiding Cheryl's gaze across the room. "Just a bunch of grown-ups talking about business." "But Mommy says families should support each other," Tara had chimed in, always the more direct of the twins. "Aren't we your family?" The question had pierced him like a physical blow, but he'd merely kissed their foreheads and promised to bring home dessert, escaping before the guilt could overwhelm him. Cheryl, perceptive and proud, confronted him one night after the twins' 4th birthday party. A small affair that Isaac had left early for a business emergency. "You're ashamed of us," she'd said, her voice quiet but firm. "Of me." "That's not true," Isaac had protested weakly. "It is true." Cheryl's eyes had held not anger but something worse. Disappointment. "You've created a world where we don't exist, Isaac. Where your black wife and mixed-race daughters don't fit the image you're trying to project. The business world is complicated." "No, it's not complicated. It's very simple. You're choosing your ambition over your family, over our love." She hadn't raised her voice, hadn't thrown things or made threats. She'd simply stated the truth that Isaac had been too cowardly to acknowledge. "I still love you," he'd offered lamely. "Love without respect isn't love at all," Cheryl had replied, her dignity intact even as tears glistened in her eyes. "And you stopped respecting us the moment you decided we were something to hide." 2 weeks later, he'd moved out, establishing himself in a sleek downtown apartment more suitable for a rising tech entrepreneur. The divorce had been quiet, with Isaac providing generous financial support, but gradually fading from his daughters' lives. His visits became less frequent, his calls shorter, until he was little more than a distant figure who sent birthday and Christmas gifts. "Why doesn't Daddy want to see us anymore?" Tara had asked Cheryl one Christmas morning, holding the expensive doll Isaac had sent but clearly longing for something money couldn't buy. "Your father loves you," Cheryl had answered, choosing her words carefully. "But sometimes people get lost in the life they think they should have, and forget about the life they already have." "Will he find his way back?" Talia had asked, hope shining in her young eyes. "That's up to him, baby," Cheryl had said, pulling both girls close. "But no matter what, we have each other. And that's enough." Cheryl never spoke ill of him to the twins. She never asked for more money, even as Winters Enterprises grew into a global powerhouse. She simply raised Tara and Talia with the strength, dignity, and authenticity that Isaac had once loved in her, qualities he had sacrificed at the altar of success. As the years passed, Cheryl built a respected career as a music teacher and vocal coach, eventually opening her own arts academy that became known for nurturing talent in underserved communities. The twins thrived under her guidance, developing into young women of exceptional character and ability. Tara, analytical and focused, discovered a passion for science that led her to prestigious research opportunities even before she graduated high school. Talia inherited her mother's artistic soul, her dancing earning her scholarships and recognition in the competitive world of performing arts. Isaac watched their progress from a distance, through the school photos Cheryl still sent each year and the occasional updates from the private investigator he hired to keep tabs on them, a fact he was too ashamed to admit even to himself. He told himself he was protecting them from the harsh spotlight of his fame, that they were better off without the scrutiny that came with being a billionaire's family. But in his most honest moments, alone in his penthouse with only his reflection for company, he knew the truth. He had failed them in the most fundamental way possible. He had denied them, and in doing so, denied the best part of himself. Now, standing in his penthouse on the eve of the Blackwood Gala, Isaac confronted the hollowness of his achievements. Tomorrow, he would stand before the world's elite, Vanessa on his arm, and announce a revolutionary new platform that would likely double his already staggering fortune. And none of it would fill the void where his heart used to be. His phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Don't forget, Armani sent over 3 tux options. The stylist will be there at 10 a.m. Isaac didn't reply. Instead, he opened his desk drawer and removed a small, leather-bound album he rarely allowed himself to look at. Inside were photos of Tara and Talia, school pictures Cheryl still sent each year, though he'd never asked her to. The most recent photos showed 2 stunning young women, now 19, with their mother's warm brown skin and expressive eyes, but with hints of Isaac's features in the curve of their jaws and the shape of their brows. Tara, always the more serious one, was studying biochemistry at Stanford. Talia, creative like her mother, was at Juilliard for dance. They had grown into remarkable young women without him. Because of Cheryl. Despite him, Isaac closed the album, a decision crystallizing in his mind. For 15 years, he had hidden his family away, convinced that embracing them would diminish his standing in the world he'd fought to conquer. But looking at his daughters' faces, seeing the women they'd become, Isaac finally recognized the magnitude of his mistake. He hadn't protected his image by hiding them, he'd only revealed the weakness of his character. Tomorrow night, at the Blackwood Gala, Isaac Winters would stand before the world's elite and make an announcement. But perhaps not the one everyone expected. For the first time in 15 years, he would tell the truth. The night of the Blackwood Gala arrived with all the pomp and circumstance befitting the social event of the season. Limousines lined the circular drive of the Grand Meridian Hotel, disgorging the elite of business, politics, and entertainment onto a red carpet flanked by photographers and reporters. Isaac adjusted his bow tie as the car pulled up to the entrance, Vanessa beside him radiating practice glamour in a designer gown that cost more than most people's annual salary. "Remember," she said, squeezing his hand with perfectly manicured fingers, "tonight is about making connections. The announcement is important, but the relationships you cement here will be what carries Winters Enterprises into its next phase." Isaac nodded, though his mind was elsewhere. All day, he'd been haunted by the decision he'd made while looking at his daughter's photographs. In the cold light of morning, his resolution had seemed impulsive, even reckless. What would he actually say? How would he explain 15 years of absence? And what would it mean for the carefully constructed image he'd built? "Isaac!" Vanessa's voice cut through his thoughts. "Are you listening? The car door is about to open." "I'm ready," he said, though he wasn't sure if that was true. The moment they stepped onto the red carpet, the flashes began. A storm of light capturing their arrival for society pages and business publications. Vanessa moved with practiced ease, striking subtle poses that showcased her gown and the significant diamond pendant Isaac had given her for their 6-month anniversary. "Mr. Winters," reporters called. "A comment on tonight's announcement? All will be revealed inside." Isaac replied with the confident smile he'd perfected over years of public appearances. Winters Enterprises is about to change the game again. They moved through the gauntlet of media and into the grand ballroom, where hundreds of guests mingled beneath crystal chandeliers. The room was a sea of wealth and influence. Tech moguls, finance titans, celebrities, and politicians all gathered to see and be seen. Isaac, Lawrence Blackwood, the evening's host and one of the most powerful venture capitalists in the country, approached with arms outstretched. "The man of the hour, Lawrence." Isaac shook his hand firmly. "Thank you for hosting tonight. Wouldn't miss it for the world." Blackwood clapped him on the shoulder. "Your new platform is going to revolutionize how we think about digital privacy. The investors are practically salivating. If you've ever had to face a moment of truth that could change everything you've built, comment below." I read every comment, and your stories of courage and authenticity inspire the content I create for this channel. "That's the plan," Isaac replied, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. "We're projecting market dominance within 18 months. As Blackwood launched into a discussion of market projections, Isaac found his attention drifting. The conversation felt hollow, the words empty. For years, these interactions had been the center of his world, The deals, the connections, the strategic positioning. Now, they seemed like elaborate theater, everyone playing roles that had little to do with who they really were. Isaac will tell you all about it during his speech. Vanessa interjected smoothly, sensing his distraction. Right now, I need to steal him to greet the senator. As she guided him through the crowd, Isaac caught glimpses of his reflection in the mirrored columns that lined the ballroom. He looked every inch the successful CEO. Tailored tuxedo, confident posture, the easy smile of a man accustomed to power. But behind that carefully constructed facade, he barely recognized himself. Who was Isaac Winters, really? The ambitious young man who had fallen in love with Cheryl's authenticity and courage? Or this hollow shell who had abandoned his family for the approval of people whose opinions shouldn't have mattered? 30 minutes until your speech, Vanessa murmured, checking her diamond watch. The Times reporter wants 5 minutes first. Isaac nodded mechanically, moving through the practiced motions of networking. He shook hands, exchanged pleasantries, discussed market trends, all while a storm brewed inside him. With each passing minute, the weight of his decision pressed more heavily on his conscience. Then, at precisely 9:15 p.m., it happened. A subtle shift rippled through the crowd near the entrance. Conversations paused. Heads turned. A path seemed to clear through the sea of black tuxedos and designer gowns. Isaac, engaged in conversation with a tech investor, felt the change before he saw its cause. Something in the energy of the room had altered, a collective intake of breath, a momentary suspension of the carefully choreographed social dance. He turned, following the direction of the gathered gazes, and the world seemed to stop. There, framed in the grand doorway of the ballroom, stood Cheryl. 15 years had only enhanced her beauty, adding a mature grace to the vibrant woman he had loved. She wore a stunning gown in deep purple that complemented her rich brown skin, her natural hair styled in an elegant updo that crowned her like royalty. But it was the two young women flanking her that truly commanded attention. Tara and Talia, his daughters, now 19 and radiating a presence that seemed to illuminate the entire room. Tara wore a sophisticated silver gown that highlighted her athletic frame, while Talia's flowing gold dress caught the light with every graceful movement, the dancer in her evident even in stillness. They moved into the room with unhurried confidence, seemingly unaware of the stir they were creating. Or perhaps, Isaac realized with a jolt, perfectly aware but unbothered by it. They carried themselves with the same authentic dignity that had drawn him to Cheryl all those years ago, the quality he had come to fear rather than cherish. Isaac! Vanessa's voice seemed to come from very far away. Who are those women? Everyone's staring. But Isaac couldn't answer. His throat had closed, his heart hammering against his ribs with such force he thought it might break through. They hadn't seen him yet, these three women who shared his blood but not his name. They moved through the crowd like visiting dignitaries, accepting the curious glances and whispered questions with serene smiles. Isaac! Vanessa's tone sharpened. Do you know them? The older one seems to be looking for someone. Indeed, Cheryl was scanning the room with purpose, her gaze moving methodically through the crowd. When her eyes finally found Isaac, there was no dramatic reaction, just a slight nod of acknowledgement before she leaned to whisper something to the twins. Both young women turned in his direction then, their expressions a complex mixture of curiosity and caution. They had his eyes, that same amber shade that looked back at him from the mirror each morning. But there was something in their gaze that was entirely their own, a clarity of vision, an unwavering assessment that made him feel transparent. Excuse me, Isaac murmured to Vanessa, setting down his champagne glass. There's something I need to do. What? Now? Your speech is in 20 minutes. Vanessa hissed, but Isaac was already moving across the room, drawn by a force stronger than social obligation or business strategy. The crowd seemed to part before him, conversations hushing as people sensed the unfolding drama. By the time he reached Cheryl and the twins, a small circle of space had formed around them, as if the other guests instinctively recognized the importance of this moment. Cheryl, Isaac said, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't expect to see you here. Clearly, she replied, her tone neutral but her eyes knowing. Lawrence Blackwood sits on the board of my arts academy. When he mentioned tonight's event, the girls expressed an interest in attending. Isaac's gaze shifted to his daughters, standing tall and poised beside their mother. Up close, the resemblance was even more striking, not just to him but to each other and to Cheryl. They were a unit, bound by love and shared experience. Family. His family, though he had forfeited the right to claim them. Tara, Talia, their names felt sacred on his tongue. You've grown so much. That's what happens in 15 years, Tara said, her voice cool but not cruel. People grow, change, become who they're meant to be. Some people, anyway, Talia added, her artist soul evident in the expressive way she held herself. Like her mother, unafraid to occupy space in a world that often tried to diminish her. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken words. 15 years of birthdays and school plays and graduations. 15 years of choices that couldn't be undone. Around them, the whispers had begun. Isaac could feel the curious stares, the speculative murmurs. Who were these women? What was their connection to Isaac Winters, the famously private CEO whose personal life had remained largely a mystery to the public? Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private, Isaac suggested, acutely aware of the attention they were attracting. Why? Cheryl asked, her gaze direct and challenging. Are you uncomfortable being seen with us, Isaac? Still, the question hung in the air between them, loaded with history and hurt. Isaac felt something crack inside him, the final fracture in the facade he'd maintained for so long. No, he said, his voice stronger now. Not anymore. He turned to face the crowd, which had grown larger as word spread through the ballroom that something unexpected was happening. Vanessa had pushed her way to the front, her expression a mixture of confusion and growing alarm. Isaac, she hissed, reaching for his arm. The Times reporter is waiting. And who are these people? Isaac gently removed her hand from his sleeve. Vanessa, I'd like you to meet Cheryl Winters Jackson, my ex-wife. He took a deep breath, then continued. And these are our daughters, Tara and Talia. The shock that registered on Vanessa's face was mirrored in the expressions of those close enough to hear. A ripple of surprise moved through the gathering crowd as the information spread. You're... what? Vanessa's perfectly composed facade cracked. You were married? You have children? Why didn't you ever tell me? Because he was ashamed of us, Talia said, her voice carrying clearly in the hushed room. Weren't you father? The directness of the question, the use of the formal father rather than dad, cut through Isaac like a blade. But it was the truth. A truth he had been running from for 15 years. If you've ever had to confront a painful truth about yourself, share this video with someone who needs to hear that authenticity always wins in the end. And subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison for more stories that explore the complexities of family, love, and redemption. The elegant ballroom fell silent as all eyes turned to Isaac, waiting for his response. In that moment, surrounded by the elite of society and facing the family he had hidden away, Isaac Winters finally understood the true cost of the choices he had made. Yes, he admitted, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. I was ashamed, not of you, never of who you are, but of my own weakness. I let others define success for me, and in doing so, I failed at the only thing that truly matters. Cheryl's expression remained composed, but something flickered in her eyes. Not forgiveness, but perhaps recognition of the truth in his words. I don't understand, Vanessa interjected, her carefully cultivated poise slipping further. You've been hiding a family all this time? Why would you do that? Isaac turned to her, seeing clearly for the first time how similar they were. Both valuing appearance over substance, both prisoners of others' expectations. Because I convinced myself that my image was more important than my integrity, he said simply. I was wrong. By now, phones were discreetly recording the scene. Society columnists were furiously taking notes, and Lawrence Blackwood himself had moved closer, fascinated by this unexpected turn in his carefully planned event. Well, Blackwood said with the awkward joviality of someone trying to defuse tension. "This is certainly more exciting than the usual corporate announcements. Perhaps we should proceed with the scheduled program? Isaac, I believe you have a speech prepared." Isaac looked at his watch. In 15 minutes, he was supposed to take the stage and unveil Winters Enterprises' revolutionary new digital privacy platform, an announcement that would likely send the company's stock soaring and cement his legacy as a tech visionary. But standing before Cheryl and his daughters, that legacy suddenly seemed hollow. "Yes," he said, making a decision that would change everything. "I do have something to say." As Isaac moved toward the stage, whispers followed him like shadows. Vanessa remained frozen in place, her perfect evening shattered beyond repair. Cheryl and the twins watched with guarded expressions, unsure what to expect from the man who had walked away from them so completely. The spotlight found Isaac as he took his position at the podium, the assembled guests quieting in anticipation of the major business announcement they had come to hear. Camera flashes punctuated the silence, capturing what everyone assumed would be a moment of corporate triumph. "Good evening," Isaac began, his voice amplified throughout the ballroom. "Many of you came here tonight expecting to hear about Winters Enterprises' next technological breakthrough, about how we're going to revolutionize digital privacy and security." He paused, scanning the crowd until he found Cheryl and the twins, standing together near the back of the room. "Instead, I want to talk about a different kind of privacy, the kind that crosses the line into secrecy, into shame." A murmur rippled through the audience. This was not the speech anyone had expected. 15 years ago, I made a choice that I've justified to myself in countless ways. I convinced myself that separating my personal life from my professional image was necessary for success. That hiding my family, yes, my family, was somehow protecting them. Isaac's gaze remained fixed on Cheryl and the twins as he continued. "The truth is much simpler and much more shameful. I allowed the prejudices and narrow definitions of success in our industry to dictate my actions. I was afraid that having a black wife and mixed-race daughters would somehow diminish me in the eyes of investors, partners, and competitors." The silence in the room was absolute now, hundreds of the most powerful people in the country confronted with an uncomfortable truth about the world they had helped create. I told myself I was being strategic, practical, but there's another word for what I was: cowardly. Isaac's voice broke slightly, but he pressed on. "Tonight, you all witnessed something remarkable, though you may not have recognized it. When my ex-wife Cheryl and our daughters Tara and Talia walked into this room, they did so with a dignity and authenticity that I abandoned long ago. They didn't need my name or my money to become extraordinary. They simply needed to be true to themselves, a lesson I failed to learn until this moment." In the back of the room, Talia reached for her sister's hand, their fingers intertwining as they had since childhood. Cheryl stood straight-backed beside them, her expression unreadable, but her presence undeniable. "The platform I was going to announce tonight is designed to give people control over their digital privacy. But what good is protecting our data if we can't be honest about who we are? What good is success if it requires us to deny the people we love?" Isaac stepped away from the podium, abandoning the prepared speech entirely. "I don't expect forgiveness from my family. I don't deserve it. But I do owe them and all of you the truth. My name is Isaac Winters. I'm the founder and CEO of Winters Enterprises. I'm also a man who made the worst mistake of his life when he chose image over love, perception over reality." He looked directly at Cheryl and the twins now, speaking to them rather than the assembled crowd. "I was wrong. I was so terribly wrong. And while I can't undo the past 15 years, I can at least stop living a lie." The silence that followed was profound, hundreds of people collectively holding their breath as they witnessed a powerful man publicly stripping away his carefully constructed facade. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, a single person began to applaud. Others joined, the sound swelling until it filled the ballroom, not in celebration of Isaac's confession, but in recognition of its cost and its courage. As the applause continued, Isaac stepped down from the stage and made his way through the crowd toward his family. The sea of guests parted before him, some reaching out to touch his shoulder in silent support, others simply watching with new understanding in their eyes. When he reached Cheryl and the twins, Isaac stopped, maintaining a respectful distance. "I don't expect anything from you," he said quietly. His words meant only for them despite the hundreds of witnesses. "I just needed you to hear the truth, finally. I'm sorry. More sorry than I can ever express." Cheryl studied him for a long moment, her gaze penetrating as it had always been. 15 years is a long time, Isaac," she finally said. "Too long to fix with one speech, no matter how honest." "I know," he acknowledged, the weight of lost years heavy on his shoulders. "But," Cheryl continued, her voice softening slightly, "it's a start." Tara, always the more analytical of the twins, spoke next. "Why now? After all this time, why tonight?" It was a fair question, one that cut to the heart of his sudden change. "Because seeing you here, seeing the women you've become despite my absence, it finally made me understand what I threw away. Not just my family, but my integrity, my authentic self." Talia, the artist, the one who had always felt emotions most deeply, studied him with eyes so like his own. "We didn't come here for you," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "We came because Mr. Blackwood invited us. Because Mom's Arts Academy is doing important work. We didn't need your acknowledgement then, and we don't need it now." "I know," Isaac said, humbled by their strength. "You never needed me, but I needed you. I just didn't have the courage to admit it." Around them, the gala had resumed its normal rhythm, though the focus had shifted dramatically. Instead of Isaac and Vanessa being the center of attention, all eyes were on Cheryl and the twins. Society photographers discreetly captured images of the stunning trio. Business leaders who had previously ignored Cheryl now approached to introduce themselves, drawn by her undeniable presence and the grace with which she handled this public revelation. Vanessa had disappeared, slipping away when it became clear that the evening, and perhaps her relationship with Isaac, had fundamentally changed. "Your speech never mentioned the new platform," Cheryl observed, a hint of her old wry humor surfacing. "Your shareholders won't be pleased." "Some things are more important than stock prices," Isaac replied, meaning it for perhaps the first time in his career. "Mom," Tara said, touching Cheryl's arm, "the director of the National Science Foundation is here. I'd like to speak with him about my research. And I see the artistic director from the Metropolitan Ballet," Talia added. "Should we?" "Go," Cheryl encouraged them. "This is your night too." As the twins moved confidently through the crowd, immediately commanding respect and attention with their poise and intelligence, Isaac watched with a mixture of pride and regret. "They're extraordinary," he said softly. "Yes," Cheryl agreed. "They are. Because of you. Because they know who they are and where they come from," Cheryl corrected. "Because they've never been ashamed of either." If the story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to choose between authenticity and acceptance? Did you make the right choice? Or do you wish you had chosen differently? Remember that it's never too late to begin living your truth, even if the road to redemption is long and uncertain. The remainder of the evening unfolded in ways no one could have predicted. The twins, with their natural charisma and remarkable accomplishments, became the unexpected stars of the gala. Tara engaged a group of scientists and investors in a passionate discussion about her research on sustainable biofuels, her intelligence and vision captivating even the most seasoned industry veterans. Talia, when coaxed by an admiring crowd, performed an impromptu dance that left the audience breathless with its grace and emotional depth. Throughout it all, Cheryl moved through the room with quiet dignity, neither seeking attention nor avoiding it. When asked about her relationship with Isaac, she answered with simple honesty, "We shared a life once. Now we share two remarkable daughters. The rest is between us." Isaac, for his part, stood at the periphery, watching the family he had abandoned shine in a world he had wrongly believed would reject them. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had hidden them away, convinced their presence would diminish his standing, only to discover that they elevated any room they entered simply by being authentically themselves. "They're quite something," Lawrence Blackwood said, appearing at Isaac's side with 2 glasses of scotch. He offered one to Isaac. "Your daughters. And their mother." "Yes," Isaac agreed, accepting the drink. "They are. You know," Blackwood continued, his tone conversational but his eyes shrewd, "I've been on the board of Cheryl's Arts Academy for 3 years now. Remarkable work she's doing, bringing arts education to communities that have been systematically denied access. The woman is a force of nature." Isaac looked at him sharply. "You knew? All this time, you knew about my family?" Blackwood shrugged. "I suspected. The twins have your eyes, and Cheryl kept her married name hyphenated with her own. It wasn't difficult to connect the dots. And you never said anything. Not my story to tell." Blackwood sipped his scotch. "Besides, I was curious to see how long you could maintain the charade. The most carefully constructed facades eventually crack, Isaac. That's the nature of anything built on a false foundation." Before Isaac could respond, a commotion near the main entrance drew their attention. Vanessa had returned, her composure restored but her eyes blazing with a cold fury. She marched directly toward Isaac, the crowd parting before her like water. "How dare you?" she hissed when she reached him, her voice low but intense. "How dare you humiliate me like this? I've spent months planning this evening, cultivating relationships, ensuring everything was perfect for your announcement. And you throw it all away for what? Some misguided attempt at public redemption." Isaac regarded her calmly, seeing clearly for the first time the emptiness at the core of the life they had been building together. "I'm sorry you feel humiliated, Vanessa. That wasn't my intention." "Your intention?" She laughed, a brittle sound devoid of humor. "Your intention was to make yourself the hero of some touching family reunion drama. Well, congratulations. You've certainly given everyone something to talk about." She glanced across the room to where Cheryl stood in conversation with a group of arts patrons, her natural elegance drawing admiring glances. "So that's her," Vanessa said, her voice tight. "The great love you never mentioned. The mother of your secret children." "Vanessa, save it." She cut him off with a sharp gesture. "We're done, Isaac. I won't be part of whatever midlife crisis you're having. When you come to your senses and realize what you've thrown away tonight, don't call me." With that, she turned and walked away, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor like a final punctuation mark on their relationship. Blackwood watched her go, then turned back to Isaac with a raised eyebrow. "Well, that was dramatic. She has every right to be angry," Isaac acknowledged. "I wasn't honest with her either." "Perhaps," Blackwood conceded. "But I suspect your ex-wife would say dishonesty has been your pattern for some time." Across the room, Isaac saw Tara and Talia rejoin their mother, the 3 of them forming a unit that radiated strength and connection. Without conscious decision, he found himself moving toward them, drawn by a need more fundamental than business strategy or social calculation. As he approached, Cheryl looked up, a question in her eyes. "May I speak with you?" Isaac asked quietly. "Just for a moment." Cheryl hesitated, then nodded. "Girls, why don't you get some dessert? I'll join you in a minute." The twins exchanged a glance, their silent communication as seamless as it had been in childhood. "We'll be watching," Tara said, her protective instinct evident in her tone. "Always," Talia added, giving Isaac a long look before they moved away. When they were alone as 2 people could be in a crowded ballroom, Isaac struggled to find the right words. How did you begin to address 15 years of absence? What could possibly bridge such a chasm? "Your speech was unexpected," Cheryl said finally, breaking the silence between them. "For me too," Isaac admitted with a small smile. "I had a very different one prepared. About your new platform." "Yes, Secure Sphere. It's a digital privacy system that gives users complete control over their personal data." "Ironic," Cheryl observed. "Coming from a man who's been so careful about controlling his own personal information." The observation was pointed but not cruel, simply truthful in the way Cheryl had always been. "I deserved that," Isaac acknowledged. And much more. This isn't about what you deserve, Isaac. Cheryl's voice softened slightly. It never was. It's about choices and consequences. You made your choice 15 years ago. We've all lived with the consequences. I know. Isaac took a deep breath. I don't expect forgiveness, Cheryl. I don't even have the right to ask for it. But I want you to know that seeing you tonight, seeing our daughters, it's forced me to confront the man I've become. And I don't like him very much. Something in Cheryl's expression shifted, not toward forgiveness, exactly, but perhaps toward understanding. The girls have done well, she said after a moment. Tara's research is being considered for a major grant. Talia just earned the lead in Juilliard's spring showcase. They're thriving, Isaac. Without you. The word stung, but Isaac nodded. Because of you. Because you gave them what I couldn't. Unconditional love and acceptance. Yes, Cheryl agreed simply. I did. I'd like to know them, Isaac said, the words emerging from a place of longing he had suppressed for years. If they're willing, I'd like the chance to be part of their lives, even in some small way. Cheryl studied him, her gaze as penetrating as it had always been, seeing through pretense to the truth beneath. That's not my decision to make, she said finally. Tara and Talia are adults now. If they want a relationship with you, I won't stand in the way. But I won't encourage it either. You'll have to earn their trust, Isaac. And that won't happen overnight. I understand. Do you? Cheryl's question was genuine. Do you understand what it means to be present for someone? To put their needs above your image or your comfort? Because that's what being a parent requires, even to adult children. Before Isaac could respond, a soft voice interrupted them. Mom? They're asking for you near the stage. Talia stood a few feet away, her expression cautious. Mr. Blackwood wants to introduce you to some potential donors for the academy. Thank you, sweetheart. I'll be right there. Cheryl turned back to Isaac. Duty calls. As she moved to leave, Isaac spoke again, the words rushing out before he could reconsider. Cheryl, wait. I just need to say, thank you for sending the photos every year, for giving me that small window into their lives, even though I didn't deserve it. Cheryl paused, then turned back to face him. I didn't do it for you, Isaac. I did it for them. So that someday, if they asked about their father, I could tell them honestly that I had kept the door open, even if you chose not to walk through it. With that, she moved away to join Blackwood near the stage, leaving Isaac alone with the weight of her words and the magnitude of all he had sacrificed for an image that now seemed meaningless. If you've ever wondered about the true cost of living an inauthentic life, this story shows how high that price can be. Hit the like button if you believe in the power of second chances, and subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison for more stories that explore the complexities of love, family, and redemption.